The following is a presentation of the Matt Talk Podcast Network.
You are now tuned in to the PA Power Podcast, featuring Jeff Upson and Eric Knopsnyder. PA Power Wrestling. PA Power Wrestling. Pennsylvania is wrestling.
What's going on, wrestling fans? You are now tuned in to the PA Power Podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Upson, joined, I want to say as always now, because, Jeremy, you've been on the show for, it seems like a long time here. You're back with us to preview some of the South Central Regional action coming up this weekend, as well as the District 3 AA tournament. Jeremy, what's going on?
Well, it's sleeting right now, so I'm kind of sitting in my apartment talking to you about wrestling, so that's pretty good. No, it's a pleasure to be back on the show again this week.
Yeah, it doesn't get much better than that, being inside in this type of weather. I actually was out in Harrisburg for work, my other job, and then I had to come back to Pittsburgh, and then I'm going back out to Harrisburg for the South Central Regional and the District 3 AA tournament this weekend, which you'll be at. We're really looking forward to that. We're really looking forward to the show. We're going to preview some of the action to see this weekend, as I mentioned, the South Central Regional, where those guys will be going to the state tournament. So the top 4 finishers at the South Central Regional, which is a self-contained District 3 tournament. The top 4 wrestlers from there will end up going to the Giant Center. Remember, this tournament is taking place in the old Hershey Arena, so pray for us all. But also the district.
I have pictures, by the way. I got to tell you, I have pictures. They were sent to me of the inside. You have no idea what you're walking into.
Okay.
I'm just telling you now. Just
good or
just
bad?
Preparing you.
Okay, just preparing. Okay, all right.
It's not good.
Okay, all right. Well, we'll see. You know, wrestling's a tough sport, so we can wrestle anywhere. Just, I'm worried about more hygiene and things of that issue. But also the District 3 AA tournament. So that's the District 3 tournament. Winners there will advance to the Southeast Regional top 6. We'll go there. So, and we're also going to talk to J.J. Wilson from Cedar Cliff, a senior, number 1 in the state. But before we do that, let's start out with AAA, Jeremy. And at 106 pounds, you have the top guy on the bracket. It's Aiden Lewis from Cedar Cliff. He is a returning state qualifier last year. He made it to the state tournament. I like where he's at on the top half. There's that bottom that, you look at the bottom and it's – I'm not saying it's wide open because you have Mason Leiphart from Dover there, but it's a little bit more – there's a little bit more unknown there. You got Wyatt Fox. You got Noah Clausen as well. Aiden Bertoldo from Hershey, who won the Section 2 tournament. So there's a few guys here that I like, but I really do think Aiden Lewis is the head of the class. But I'm excited to see what Mason Leiphart can do because he's a guy who's only a freshman, so we haven't seen him yet here before. But can he kind of push those guys that are in his bracket?
Well, and the interesting part there is he's going to face Noah Clausen probably in the quarterfinals, which I think that might be the best quarterfinal in that particular bracket. So we're going to see what Mason has pretty early on and see if he's going to be able to contend with Aiden, because obviously Aiden wrestled Noah last week and beat him. So again, I think that quarterfinal match is something to keep an eye on.
Yeah, no, I agree with you there, and I think Wyatt Fox on the bottom half as well. He could have a good quarterfinal with Aiden Bertoldo, who actually has Caden Dobbins from Dallastown in the first round, who's no slouch, right? And I know you got to see him in the team tournament, and you like the way he's wrestling. So 106 is an intriguing weight because there aren't as many big names there. But Aiden Lewis, I think it's his to lose. We'll see what happens.
No, I agree with you. I think it is Aiden's to lose. But again, look, it's districts. You're in the Hershey Park Arena. I mean, the moment, obviously. It's going to be interesting to see. I mean, look, face it, Aiden's a sophomore. You don't know how he's going to react. Mason is a freshman, and Noah Clausen's also a sophomore. This is a glory weight, or this is what I like to call a glory weight, because you have a lot of underclassmen, a lot of young guys. So you just never know what's going to happen and how they're going to react at a District 3 championship like this.
Yeah, and Lewis last week beat Noah Clausen 9-5 in that final. So, and Clausen knocked off Fox in the semifinals 7-5. So it should be a tight one here. You move up to 113 pounds, and your top seed is Ben Mon from Cumberland Valley, who is a returning state medalist. Last year at the state tournament, competing at 106, he was 6th in the state. He won his section last week. That's section 3, and he actually had a couple tough matches. He beat Carl, and let's hear it, Jeremy. Carl Schindeldecker from Chambersburg. He beat him 1-0 in the semifinals. Really tight match there. And then he beat Colbert from Cedar Cliff 4-0 in the final. So not a necessarily easy road in that kind of stacked section 3. Ben Mon's on that top half, but also up there is Liam Strauss from Northern York, who last week finished in 4th place. You see, and he was a state qualifier there last year as well. And then on the bottom half, you have, as I mentioned before, Carl Schindeldecker, but he's going to have a nice first-round match with Zach Emery from York Suburban, who's 25-5 on the season, also a freshman. And one of the guys that intrigues me more so than others is Gavin Richard from Daniel Boone. He's a freshman, 24-2. He was a section champ last weekend, but you don't really get to see, and I don't really get to see a lot of Daniel Boone. So, how good is he going to be on that bottom half?
Well, I think it's that, and I think you're forgetting Josh Miller from Central Dauphin, who's down at the bottom of the bracket. He's going to wrestle probably Colbert in the quarterfinals. And when I keep going back to these quarterfinals, I mean, that's a round that you're probably really going to want to pay attention to in AAA, because we're going to find out a lot about these guys and how they're going to fare. Now, again, Josh Miller's a sophomore. Colbert is a senior. So, he might have a little bit of an advantage in this setting, although I think people are going to be more worried about the seats that are missing and what they're wrestling in. Let's hope not. But, again, I think Ben Mon has a slight advantage over everybody because he, again, state qualifier, state placer. But watch out for Josh Miller on the bottom side of that. It'll be interesting to see how he fares, and we'll find out in the quarters against Bear probably.
Yeah, and I'm not going to sleep on Carl Schindeldecker from Chambersburg.
That's because you like his name.
I don't like, because I don't like saying the name because it's more difficult than you would Smith. But I like the way he's wrestling because he's a guy who, you don't lose 1-0 to Ben Mon without having pushed some action, right? And he's a guy who I think maybe will get overlooked just because of his record, so to speak. But I think he's a guy who's going to do well on that bottom half. I wouldn't be surprised if he pulls some upsets and ends up in the finals, to tell you the truth. One thing to note here is the change in Section 2. The runner-up there from Hershey, Ethan Kettner, is not in the bracket. So he withdrew for whatever reason. I don't have particulars on that, but he was second to Josh Miller, lost 5-3 in that final, so he won't be in there. So that sort of opens it up a little bit. But yeah, this one I'm excited to see how it all plays out.
Yeah, and he would have been in the top half of the bracket. And he would have wrestled Ben Mon again in the quarters probably. So Ben Mon probably, you never want to say gets a break, but I mean, in all fairness, he's going to face the third guy out of Section 2 instead of the second guy. So Again, it just makes Ben Mon's path to the semifinals and finals a little easier, I would think.
You move up to 120 pounds, and probably one of the more intriguing weights of the South Central Regional is 120. At the top, you have Cole Wilson from Northeastern, was a section champ last week, winning Section 4. He's 32-1 on the season. He's a returning state medalist, was 4th in the state last year. He's on the top, but on the bottom, you have Will Betancourt from Manheim Central, a junior, 32-3. Also, a section champ last week, was second in Section 2, and these two have met numerous times in the Giant Center, or now it's going to be the Hershey Arena, but these guys have faced off in the last two South Central Regional tournament finals, one at 106, one at 113, and Will Betancourt has won both of them. But Cole Wilson has finished higher in the state tournament, so we talked about this on the last podcast. I think those two are sort of head of the classes, but I would not look past Cody Evans, who had a great tournament last weekend. I think he really shined and surprised some people. Same with Tim Euler from New Oxford.
I like Cody Evans a lot. High energy, goes after it. It's nonstop action. Had a tech fall in his final, so against Rustin Zelak of Cumberland Valley. So I like Cody Evans to go to the semifinals here. Cole Wilson and face Cole Wilson, obviously, and Will Betancourt was 7th in the state a year ago. So, and he's a junior yet. I feel like he's been here forever.
Right.
And I'm sure he's going to want to improve on that as well. So this is an intriguing wake to me. And again, I said this last week. I think we're getting in that 120 to 138 range is where you really see a lot of good action. So I'm looking forward to this wake just to see how Cody Evans fares.
Yeah, Cody Evans really impressed me last weekend, and you were there in person to see it. He beat Jeff Russell from Shippensburg. He beat him 10-3, and then in the finals, he just manhandled Rustin Dezelak from Cumberland Valley, like you said, by tech fall. And this is a guy who's Cody Evans has taken a few losses this year that he probably shouldn't have. Definitely not wrestling to his full potential, but clearly he came to compete last week at Mechanicsburg. So can he keep that momentum rolling into the Hershey Park Arena? I think he will, because as you mentioned, just that high pace, obviously something's clicking. The one match that I'm really looking forward to that first round is Tim Euler versus Jeff Russell. These are two guys that have been ranked in the state essentially all year. Tim Euler was a state qualifier last year. Jeff Russell was 5th in the region last year, so he was a match away from making the state tournament. And they're going to meet in the first round here. So, as you mentioned, this is where we start really seeing some good brackets.
Well, and in the quarters, the winner of that match is going to see probably Will Betancourt.
Right.
So, I mean, no easy draw. I mean, you take a loss in your section, and then you end up in a bad spot, possibly on the brackets.
So let me ask you this: who are you taking, Cole Wilson or Will Betancourt?
Well, that's tough.
It is tough because Will Betancourt. I'm going with Will Betancourt because he hasn't lost to Cole Wilson. He finds ways to win.
Well, Jeff, it's tough to pick between those two. I mean. And does Will Betancourt, is he in Cole Wilson's head now? I mean, that's the other thing you have to ask. So Will Betancourt has the edge, but don't be surprised if Cole Wilson gets the nod. And I'm actually going to go with Cole Wilson. Third time's a charm, so to speak, and I just think from a motivation factor. So I'm going to take Cole Wilson this time around.
Yeah, I mean, these two are very evenly matched. Like I said, they were both state qualifiers as freshmen. Last year, Wilson was 4th, Betancourt was 7th. This year, one's 32-1, the other's 32-3. So, yeah, these guys are pretty evenly matched. I'm looking forward to it. I hope we get to see that again in the finals here. But let's move up to 126, and this is a guy who we're going to be talking to here in a few minutes, and that's J.J. Wilson from Cedar Clip. 33-2 on the season. He's a senior. He's going to Cornell. He was a Powerade runner-up. He's number 1 in the state. It looks like it's his bracket all the way. Jeremy, I know you got to see him last weekend against Rafael Portilla from Carlisle, who gave him a good match. Could we see that again this weekend?
I think we're going to see this again. Rafael looked really good against JJ. JJ maybe. I sat next to Rob Rapsey, or within that I could hear what he was saying in the chair, and I know he wanted a little more out of JJ. I get that, but Raphael was scrappy. I thought his length was good. I thought his energy was good. I thought really hard fought 5-0 decision. So I like Raphael to get through this bracket and get all the way to the finals again. I think they're going to see each other there. Now I think JJ Wilson's better. And I think JJ, of course, being a senior, going to Cornell next year, I think he's on a mission to improve on that 4th place finish in states that he had last year. But I think he's going to have to go through Raphael again in the finals of districts to get it done.
Yeah, and one guy I'm not going to look past is Logan Palt from Central York, and he's a guy who won his section last weekend. Can he caused some issues there on that bottom half, being from Section 4, 29-2 on the season. He's a senior. He's at over 100 career wins. I think he could cause some issues in that quarterfinal. Again, we mentioned that quarterfinal. That would be a heck of a quarterfinal matchup. Rafael Portilla and Logan Pouch from Central York. I think that would be a good one. This is a loaded weight class, especially from Section 3. You look at all the guys here, especially the rankings. You look at the rankings for the South Central Regional. You have J.J. Wilson 1, Rafael Portilla 2, you have Cole Grove 4, Dylan Ramsey 5, Mason V-Man from Cumber Valley 6th. So you got a lot of talent here from that Section 3. So Cole Grove, he could sneak through. I think Cole Grove could make the semifinals. I think he could beat Andrew Bliss if he makes it. So I don't know. This is more of a lot of fun matches here.
There are, and then usually you don't have that with a weight class that has somebody like JJ in it. But I think you do have a lot of, intriguing is the word I'd use, matches in this weight class. And boy, the quarters, just going through the first 4 weight classes that we went through, the quarters are going to be pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of good quarterfinal matches that could happen here, and I really do think we're going to see that Section 3 show its muscles. I think Dylan Ramsey can make the semifinals against J.J. Wilson, and I think Cole Grove could be out there against Rafael Portilla. So it could be an all Section 3 semifinals here at 126, but we shall see. Speaking of 126, on the line now is J.J. Wilson. JJ, you're going into your final South Central Regional this weekend. You're number 1 in the state. You got to be feeling pretty good about how you've been wrestling this season. First of all, thanks for joining us, and tell us a little bit about this weekend.
Just another tournament in my eyes. Last one, but I mean, 4th time around, same thing for me. I think mainly getting my teammates into the matches too, getting them through to states.
And talk about your season thus far. We got to see you at Powerade. You were a runner-up there. What has been the difference this year? Because I feel like you've been really wrestling at a different level this year. What can you attribute that maybe difference to in that up, especially up at 126? You just seem to be really wearing down your opponents. Maybe even started last year at the end of your season at the state tournament when you were able to grind people out. Talk about that momentum for you.
This season, I feel like I've done better just because of how I've been able to manage my weight so much more efficiently than other years. I've been able to not skyrocket after weigh-ins and get up like 8-10 pounds over. I've kept it pretty controlled all year. And then just getting in the room and getting my butt beat by other coaches. It's different when I'm out on the mat wrestling kids who are 126 pounds instead of 150, 160 in the room.
JJ, Jeremy here. You're going into this is your last run. I mean, you're a 3-time state qualifier. You placed 4th last year. I mean, do you feel, how do you kind of not peak too early? I mean, obviously you're ranked number 1 in the state. How do you kind of approach these? I know you said just another tournament, but let's face it, there's got to be a lot of motivation there because this is your last hurrah in high school.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Ever since the start of the season, I've had a piece of paper taped to my mirror that says, J.J. Wilson, career wins record, 4-time sectional champ, 3-time district champ, CIAA state champion. I mean, I look at that every day and think, just to think that now it's all coming together and I'm on pace to do all those things is just really, it just feels good to know that I'm about to trying to accomplish all those.
Now, that being said, Giant Center hasn't always been kind. You've wrestled some tough weight classes and whatnot. How do you approach it this year? Do you do it differently because you haven't gotten to the top of the podium? And do you just kind of leave it all out in the mat? What's your approach, say, this postseason as opposed to the last 3?
Last postseason I dealt with shoulder injury the entire postseason. So last year I was wrestling a little more conservative, a lot of closer matches. Rob's really pushing me this year to open matches up and blow kids out of the gates, get a big lead and just keep pounding on them, score points.
Now, you had a tough match in sectionals, obviously, with Rafael Portilla. I was surprised how much he was able to push you, but he matched your intensity a little bit. How important is a match like that going into the postseason? I mean, I'm sure you didn't think that it was going to be necessarily easy, but did you expect him to kind of push you that much to really kind of slug it out with you there? And how important is it to have a match like that?
I mean, he came out, did feel a little bit stronger, a little bit quicker than last time. But, I mean, I was not moving my feet. I was stuck in the mud the whole first period. So that's on me. I got to get my shots better and get rolling. And Rob talked to me about that, about getting my motor going right away in the first period and wearing kids down. But what was the second part to that question?
Well, I mean, how important is it to have a match like that where maybe you don't perform up to what your standards are, or have a person push you this early in the postseason?
I mean, it shows me that, I'm not that great. I'm still human. I still got to work in these matches and work against good kids like him.
And JJ, you talked about getting your teammates ready to go. You looked at what your team was able to do this year. You had a really good run, winning District 3 for the second time, and you guys got Donovan Ball, Michael Cassidy, Colbert. What do you do, and what do you say to those guys to get them excited and to get them kind of pumped up and really going to Hershey Park Arena with a lot of motivation?
I think the main motivation behind this team is we've been striving to be the best Cedar Cliff team ever in Cedar Cliff history, which is saying a lot considering the tradition at Cedar Cliff, all the great coaches in the past and everyone who's come through the program.
Yeah, I mean, that's a tall task to fulfill when you look at all the big names that came through Cedar Cliff, like you said. Going forward, you're going to be going to a school with a lot of tradition as well, and that's Cornell up in Ithaca, New York. Talk about your decision to go to Cornell and what you're looking forward to most of being in the Big Red.
Yeah, I went up there last November on an official for a match, and it was just beautiful up there. Nice weather. I mean, it does get cold, but you can learn to deal with that. Beautiful campus. Coaches are great. Facilities great. You got guys like Yanni Giacomohalis up there, Ben Darmstadt. They're just great people all around. It's a really upcoming program. A lot of young guys.
JJ, real quick, and then we'll get you out of here. But have you talked to them, or have you what you need to work on? I mean, I know Cornell's next year. I get it. But let's face it, there's always that influence in us talking to a lot of seniors of preparing for college. Are there things that you've worked on or they told you to work on in high school to kind of prepare for that season next year at Cornell?
I mean, wrestling-wise, not really. I mean, Rob Cole's called me a couple times during the season, asked how I've done. Gabe Deans reached out to me, asked me how I've been feeling at tournaments, how I'm looking. It's mainly from the academic perspective of hey, yeah, just remember, keep your grades up. We got to keep you up there for Ivy League standards and stuff like that.
Well, JJ, we look forward to seeing you this weekend, you along with all the other Cedar Cliff Colts. We hope that you advance a lot of those guys to the state tournament. Best of luck to you, and looking forward to seeing you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yep, no problem. Thanks, JJ.
Thank you, JJ.
Thanks to JJ Wilson for joining us on the show. I know he's getting ready to go into practice, and we don't want to keep him from that, as he talked about, Jeremy. What do you think of his mindset going into this weekend?
I would say focused is the word to describe him. I think he's also not too high, not too low. I think he talked about teammates, which I think that shows the unity at Cedar Cliff as well. This team concept they have there, which I think is good going into any tournament because they can push each other in the room. It is an individual. It's the individual time now. We hear coaches talk about that, but it seems like they push each other in the room. They're concerned about each other, and I like seeing that. And he's just supremely focused going into the postseason, and he needs that because to finish better than he did last year.
You move up to 132 pounds, and you look at the top, and you see Clay Baker from Spring Grove, 23-4 in the season. He's a guy who's a senior. He was a state qualifier not last year, but the year before. So in 2017, he was a state qualifier, has over 100 wins in his career. He won Section 4. He's at the top. But also you have Bryce Brennan from Redland, who was a state qualifier last year, finished third in Section 3, that always deep Section 3. So we could see a quarterfinal match there between Clay Baker and Bryce Brennan, two guys that have made it to the state tournament before. And then on the bottom half, you have Michael Cassidy sitting at that bottom. 31-4 in the season. He's a senior, just recorded his 100th win at the state dual team tournament. He's sitting there, but also in that bracket is Nick Toole from Mechanicsburg, also a state qualifier last year, a solid wrestler. You have Mason Lewis from Dover, Bryce Buckman from Central Dauphin, Mason Myers from Central York, who I think is a solid wrestler as well. So 132, and this is a weight class that I've said has been more wide open than others. The guy who impressed me the most, and that was last weekend, was Cade Reichert from Cumberland Valley. He had a really good tournament, beating Bryce Brennan in the semifinals 1-0, then losing to Michael Cassidy 6-3. But he had a nice win over Brennan, who's really tough. So again, I think Michael Cassidy may be the head of the class here, but there's a ton of guys that can push some of these top guys.
Yeah, I just don't think this weight class has a lot of drop off. I don't think you have a star. Like, we talked about JJ in 126. I think it's kind of that straight line across with not many dips, which means anybody can be had here. I mean, we're going to probably see, like you said, Bryce Brennan and Clay Baker wrestle in the quarters. And then look out, Cade Reichert and Cade Zemer probably in the other quarterfinal in that half of the bracket. And I mean, Cade Reichert could get all the way to the finals. I think he's wrestling well right now, and he did push Cassidy. Now, I thought Cassidy was a little better, and obviously, being Michael Cassidy's, again, guy seems like he's been around a long time. I think he's going to be tough in this weight class. I think Michael Cassidy's the guy to beat, but not by much.
Yeah, the margin isn't very large, right? And I think Cassidy is solid, but you took the words out of my mouth. The Battle of the Cades, I think we're going to see that, Cade Reichert and Cade Zemer. Cade Zemer won a tough Section 2. I'd like that matchup and potentially in the quarterfinals to set up a meeting with possibly Clay Baker. So, yeah, I think 32's got a lot of intriguing matches to look out for. You go to 138. At the top, you'll see TT Elijah from Lower Dauphin, who's a junior, 26-4 on the season. He won the Section 3 tournament. On the bottom half here is a freshman, a rookie, a guy who I talked about in the last podcast, JT Hogan from Daniel Boone. Very talented young freshman. But that bottom half, you look at the guys there, it gets messy. You have Matt McCann from Waynesboro, who won a Section 4 title. You have Connor Zemer. You have Colton Jumper from Carlisle, who was a state qualifier last year, only 19-4 this year. Can he come out and really set his, kind of like Rafael Portillo. I mean, Rafael has sort of maybe set himself apart from the rest of the pack outside of J.J. Wilson. Can Colton Jumper sort of take that jump, no pun intended, to the next level?
Yeah, I'm a little. I know JT Hogan is really talented and a nice wrestler. He's a freshman, though. And I'm anxious to see how he performs in that bottom half. I think Colton Jumper looked really good last week. And, I mean, he got taken out by TT, which I think TT's kind of the class of this field. But I don't think he'll have any problems getting to the finals. It's who's he going to wrestle. I think that bottom half is wide open as far as who he's going to wrestle. And it could be Colton Jumper again.
Yeah, no, it absolutely could. In fact, if you look at the rankings, we have TT 1 and Colton Jumper 2, JT Hogan 3. So, I agree with you. I think TT's he's a two-time state qualifier, has a ton of quality wins under his belt. I would be shocked if he doesn't make it to the state tournament and not come away with a medal. I think he's just poised to come away with a medal. And you look at that other in that top half, you have Kate Althouse from Ephrata and Jared Baer from New Oxford. That's an intriguing matchup of two guys that have both finished fifth in the region at one point in their careers. That they're going at it in the first round, so should be an interesting one. But still think TT's got an easy. I think he's going to make it to the finals here. Ty Weathersby from Central Dauphin. I'll give my Central Dauphin guy some love here. He won the Section 2 title, so that was a good showing for him. As you mentioned, JT Hogan, that's an unknown, right? I have not seen those Daniel Boone guys yet, so it's hard for me to say, how well I think he's going to do.
Yeah, and again, under the bright lights of a district championship, tournament. So
the lights aren't really that bright in the Hershey Arena.
No, no.
They're very dull.
I do think
right?
this.
So,
what's
that?
And you bring up a good point. I think this thing being at Hershey Park Arena helps the underclassmen, in this tournament, but could hurt, down the road at States because you get giant center experience in districts. You're not going to be bothered.
You're not
by
going to be shell shocked when you walk into the Giant Center for the first time for the state tournament. Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
So it's a catch-22. You're going to walk out in this dungeon where the lighting's bad, the seats are missing on the lower bowl. It's going to be really interesting.
Well, we will see what happens. Hopefully we all make it out alive there. 145, Brandon Connor from Wilson Westlawn, 33-3 on the season. He is a guy who finished first in Section 1. He's at the top. And on the bottom, you have guys like Mitchell Arch from Central Dauphin, who dropped down to 45 and won a section title from Section 2. Also on that bottom half, you have Luke Sonato from Gettysburg, who's a junior. I really like the way he's been wrestling this season thus far. He was a two-time regional qualifier. He's 78-24 in his career, so obviously he's been doing some things right. You have guys like Tommy Dressler from Spring Grove, a guy who I was very impressed with this season. He lost to Sonato in the Section 4 finals, but still was a good match for him. Talk about Hunter Gregoris from Big Spring, Jeremy. You were really impressed with him.
Look, this bracket was turned upside down last week in the semifinals at Mechanicsburg when Hunter Gregoris he 14-7 over Tate Nichter. Who you had number 6 in the state, and Gregoris is not anywhere. He's not in the top 25. So it was an unexpected result. And anytime you have that, it really tips the bracket or affects the bracket the next week. Now look at it. Tate Nichter's at the bottom. What do you think Elijah Ortega's thinking? Or Mitchell Arch, who's at the bottom? They thought they were going to have an easier road. Now they're going to get the number 6 guy in the state who got upset. And really, Jeff, the Gregoris match, I thought Gregoris, he did a great job. He wrestled arguably his best tournament. He's saving it for the right time. He's a senior. He's going to go, he wants to leave it all on the mat, and he talked about that afterward. And we, obviously we had a story on PA Power. Nothing's going to bother him. He's not worried about who's across the mat from him.
Yeah, and I looked at the results, and you were there in person. But in that quarterfinal rounds, he beats Greg from Harrisburg 11-8, and I'm thinking, man, that's probably a guy he should have beat a little bit larger margin. And then he beats Tate Nichter by a larger margin, 14-7, a guy who, as you said, was top 10. I love how you reminded me 4 times that I had him ranked in the top 10 in the state and he didn't win the section. Thank you. I know that. Tate Nichter's still a stud, so don't get it twisted. You look at that bottom half, and that really changes the complexity of things because, as you said, Nichter's going to have Ortega, who's a runner-up from Section 1, who's not a bad senior, right? He's pretty solid. But then most likely maybe Mitchell Arch wins his first match, and then I think Tate Nichter's favored in that as long as he can stay out of the Arch cradle. But I think this opens up things a little bit on that bottom half. The top half, I think Gregoris, he's kind of, I don't like his draw for him because he was most likely going to have to go through Tommy Dressler and Brandon Connor to get to the finals. So, he kind of got the short end of the stick a little bit. Not anyone's fault, but just the way they line up.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm going to go out. I'm not going to go out on a limb. I don't think this really is as much like when I said Becca is going to win states, albeit people were down on him at the time. I think Tate Nichter wins this bracket. I think he wins the tournament. I think he bounces back. I love guys that lose in sections that are supposed to win. I like him to come back the next week. I mean, I'm sure he talked to his brother Luke, who's also at Chambersburg. I'm sure Menser worked him out pretty hard this week. I expect Tate to come back with a vengeance this week. I wouldn't be surprised if he beats everybody by 6 or more points.
Look at you making these bold predictions.
Look, I love guys that get beat like that, guys that are supposed to win. They're not used to losing. It really sits with them. And I think this is one of those deals. I think Tate Nichter comes out and dominates this bracket.
Okay. Well, I'm not set, kind of like that 32. 45 is a lot more wide open for me. I mean, Brandon Connor, he's solid, but he hasn't made it. He was a state qualifier the first 2 years of his career, was regional 5th last year. I think he's more than capable of winning that, but I wouldn't look past Tommy Dressler from Spring Grove. And as you mentioned, Hunter Gregorius, if he can wrestle like he did last week, he's going to win this bracket. So there's a lot of unknowns here. I think this is one to keep an eye on. There's going to be a ton of quarterfinals matches to watch. So 45 should be fun, Jeremy. Let's go up to 152. And this weight, when we talk about wide open, right, not saying that this is more wide open than 32 or 45, but we have two guys that are pretty solid, right? Colton Zimmerman from Carlisle, he's on the top half, and you also have Tanner Updegraff from Hershey. Let's not sleep on Colby Elliott from Wilson Westlaw, and he's 36-1 on the season. I really am starting to like 152. At the beginning of the year, I'm thinking, man, who's going to be at 52? And then Colton Zimmerman, find out he's at Carlisle, and Updegraff is at Hershey now. It may not have the depth here at 52, but there's some really high quality wrestlers in that top 4 or 5 range.
You got 3 guys in this bracket who are ranked in the top 8 in the state. I mean, that's enough said right there. I mean, You got that many guys positioned in this bracket, and I think you have a good bracket. I mean, and Idle and Updegraff are going to be the ones they're got to wrestle each other down on the bottom. So I think that gives Zimmerman a little bit of a nice draw to the finals, just the way that this is set up. So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. I mean, let's not forget, I guess it's Kevin Sullivan's down there in the bottom as well. I mean, there's another ranked wrestler. So you have 3 wrestlers in the top 25 in the state down on the bottom half of this bracket. I mean, that's a pretty tough draw.
You're right. That's you look at those and like you said, and even throw in Seth Runshaw as well. I know he's not ranked, but he had a great tournament last weekend for Chambersburg. We talked about those Chambersburg guys, and I thought he wrestled well. He did lose to Colton Zimmerman, but we haven't even mentioned Cody Ramju from Susquehannock. He's 24-1. Right. So, and he's sitting at the top of the bracket there. So we can't look past him either. I think he makes it to semifinals against Colton Zimmerman. And I think Idle and Updegraff may end up meeting in the bottom half semifinals. So this one definitely more intriguing because you don't have that clear cut number 1.
Agreed.
Let's move up to 160, where I believe there is a clear-cut number 1, and that's Clayton Ulrey from Lower Dauphin, 33-1 on the season. He's number 2 in the state, returning state medalist. I love the way that Clayton Ulrey wrestles, and you mentioned it. He wrestled Dylan Reinhardt earlier this year from Gettysburg and really took it to him on his feet. Reinhardt is 40-2 on the year, and he won sections last week, Section 4 tournament. He's on that bottom half. But there's some other guys here that are going to linger. Ethan Bainey from Southwestern, who last year, like Ulrey, was a state medalist. So he already has PIAA hardware. He's a junior. He did lose to Reinhardt in the Section 4 finals last year. So that puts him on that top half with Clayton Ulrey. But also Jarn Arnett's from Governor Mifflin, he's on that bottom half. He won Section 1 last weekend, 30-6 on the year. So, again, maybe not so much open, because you have guys like Clayton Ulrey and Dylan Reinhart, but it's going to be intriguing to see who can get that like third and fourth place finishes here.
Yeah, and I agree. I mean, this is Clayton Ulrey's bracket. I don't see anybody challenging him. I mean, when I say I don't, I mean, I saw the Dylan Reinhart Ulrey match at Trojan Wars, and I thought it was pretty lopsided. So
right.
I think Reinhart gets to the finals, and I agree with you. The battle for third and fourth. I mean, Blazak from Northern had a pretty good tournament last week.
He had a great tournament. I mean, he's
right.
A sophomore. Yeah.
He's 18-11. I mean, that's nothing to be pleased about. It's nothing to write home about. But I mean, hey, it's a different time. Nothing you did before sectionals mattered at this point, unless it's an injury. So Blazak, maybe he can pull some upsets and get there himself. So it's an interesting bracket just to see who's going to get those last two spots. But as far as who's going to be at the top of the podium, this is a no-brainer to me.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a ton of you could throw in a bunch of names. Josh McNair from Conestoga Valley, John Lydon from Dallastown, Ethan Bainey, Quinn Foley. I think those all are guys that have a chance on the top half to place top four. John Arntz from Governor Mifflin. Carson Mello had a good one in addition to Bay. Blazak, I think he's as well one guy to keep an eye on. Anthony Steinmeier from Wilson Westlawn up 2 weights. So, yeah, that third and fourth place battle may be a little bit more intriguing here than that first and second. We gotta talk about the big one here. 170, Edmund Ruth, the truth, right? 26-0. He's won how many matches? 100 matches in a row now. The kid just is a stud. Talk a little bit about that match, Jeremy, because you were there. You got to see him versus Luke Nichter, who's a state runner-up nonetheless. Edmund Ruth is a 2-time state champion looking for that third. What happened?
I'll tell you what, Edmund Ruth was never in trouble. He's slick on his feet. I was surprised when I saw him because when I left, and then, obviously I saw him in street clothes at Penn Live's Media Day, but he was bigger. I mean, he really filled out, and he looked. When I saw him a few years ago, I mean, he was thin-legged, needed to fill out. This guy's a man now, okay, and he's fast, he's slick, and he's strong. He can score on the outside really well, and that's what he did in the match against Luke Nichter. I thought he just was dominant in the neutral position, and I think. Again, we're going to see that throughout this tournament. I don't think Luke Nichter's going to get there. I mean, he's going to get to the finals. Luke wasn't happy with the way he wrestled. He didn't push the pace much. I think he was a little conservative. He talked about that after the match. He thinks he needs to keep Ruth inside because and hand fighting and whatnot because Ruth didn't score there. He scored on the outside. So he could have a game plan, but I don't think it's going to matter. I think Edmund Ruth is way more polished than when I saw him before, even more than last year. And I think he's going to be tough to handle. I think Ruth wins it, and I think Luke Nichter is second.
Well, this is a match we could see not only a second time, but a third time. If they get to it this weekend, we could see it again in the Giant Center. And Luke Nichter's going to, I mean, that loss kind of puts him at a disadvantage on that bottom half because I believe that he's going to see Anthony Hinson from Spring Grove, 29-2 on the season. He was a state qualifier last year, had a really good season last year, went 40-6. I like the way he wrestles. He has over 120 wins in his career. So it could be a Hinson and Nichter semifinals. That top half, though, I wonder who's going to get Ruth in the semifinals because Timmy Smith from Central Dauphin was the Section 2 champion. He's 39. He has a good shot to get there, but Tanner Schaller from Central York, also a solid wrestler, 26-8 on the year. So, again, kind of like 160. We know who the big two are, and then I would put Anthony Hinson as a third. But who's going to fight for that fourth one? So it should be fun to see. You said it was a competitive bout with Ruth and Nichter, but like you said, Nichter's really going to have to bring a different game plan in order to get his hand raised this time around.
Yeah, I mean, he's just going to have to push the pace more. He kind of didn't do a whole lot. and he's going to need to keep Ruth in tight. I mean, you can't. Ruth is too quick. I think he's strong. When he gets you, he brings you down, and I just don't see Luke's going to have to. It's going to have to be a 180 from last week.
All right. Well, let's move up to 182 pounds, and this one is a definitely, because we talked about, Jeremy, I remember sitting back in September talking to you, and you said, man, everyone's talking about 182, because we originally thought maybe Edmund Ruth and Luke Nichter were both going to be there, Nehemiah Diggs and Jacob Lucas, which 182 is still a very solid weight class, but you look here at 182, Jarrett Feeney from Dallastown is your top of the podium, or top of the bracket, 26-5 on the season. He was a state qualifier last year, but on the bottom half he has Niam Flukas from Hershey, who is 31-2, was also a state qualifier last year. But look at this first round match: Nehemiah Diggs versus Keegan McCord, which I mean, both those wrestlers I think are very solid. Nehemiah Diggs was a state qualifier last year. He's going to Edinburgh. If whoever wins that, they're going to push Feeney for sure. That's not going to be an easy match for either one of those wrestlers. But then you also have Jacob Lucas on that bottom half. I think Jacob Lucas made out really well winning that Section 3 title, because he's going to have, most likely, if he makes it to the semifinals, which I think he does, is Flukas, who's a guy he's familiar with and wrestled before. So top half a little bit more loaded.
Yeah, I was disappointed with Nehemiah Diggs last week. I didn't think he did much at all in the final. I'll tell you what, if he wrestles like he did in the finals this week, he's going to lose in the first round. I mean, it's plain and simple. He's got to push the pace more. He really just didn't do a lot. Now, maybe part of that was Jacob Lucas, but come on. I mean, he needed to do more. I'm not picking on Gage. I expected to see more. And now he's put himself in a position where he has a really tough draw to get to even the semifinals.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
well, yeah.
I mean, you have to look at this weight. And, I mean, Jarrett Feeney, I've seen him. He's going to push the pace. And,
right.
McCord's going to, I think, push the pace just because I think Mannheim – I mean, let's not forget who's coaching him now. Chamberlain is not going to. He gets his wrestlers to push. So I think that top four, that top four pod, so to speak, at the top of the 182 bracket is really interesting. It's going to be interesting to see if Nehemiah picks up the pace, which he's going to have to get to the semifinals.
You move up to 195 pounds, and this is one you also talked a lot about, and that's Kyle Schwartz from Northern York. He won it over Donovan Ball from Cedar Cliff, and this was a rematch. They had wrestled earlier in the year. Donovan Ball was a state medalist last year, and he's going to Penn State. Kyle Schwartz is a guy who's only a junior last year, did not make it to the state tournament. He's 32-1 on the year. He's on that top half. And I'd say he has a pretty open path here. I don't see anyone here really pushing him. You have Chase Mathis, TJ Keener, and Ben Solo. But I really think Kyle Schwartz is the head of that top half. And on the bottom half, I really do think Donovan Ball also has a pretty solid path to the finals. Jackson Talbert is also down there on that bottom half, 31-6, who's a solid wrestler, don't get me wrong, but Donovan Ball is sort of, being a returning state medalist, you've got a lot of credentials to your name. So what do you see? You said it was a slugfest there last week. Are we going to see it again?
Yeah, we are, except I think the outcome is going to be different. I think Donovan Ball is going to get him the third time around. Again, I'm one of those guys that likes the wrestler who's lost twice, unless you're going up against somebody like Spencer Lee or somebody like that. But these two are even. Kyle Schwartz and Donovan Ball are pretty even. Donovan, it was physical. I thought there was some very, very questionable officiating last week, which I think that goes back to having 6 sections and dividing everybody up. I don't think you're going to have that this week. I think there were some stalling calls that were not called and were called. I think the one double caution on the start that wasn't called was a factor. These guys are going to go at it again in the finals. I think I'm going to give the edge to Ball this time. Now, that in no way is ripping Kyle Schwartz. Kyle Schwartz is really good. He took down Ball last week early, and I thought that was key. Setting the tone early, getting that early takedown, I think really set the tone for that match and put Ball in a position that maybe he didn't want to be in, which is coming from behind. And Ball even acknowledged that after the match, saying he can't get taken down that quick, even though I thought Ball was better wrestler after that. I thought Ball from that time on was pushed the pace more. I think he dominated the pace, but hey, he got taken down early, and you can't have that happen. And so these two wrestlers are pretty close, so it'll be interesting to see them in the finals again. I don't think there's anybody in this bracket who can challenge either of them.
Let's move up to 220 pounds, and Jamal Brandon from Dallastown is at the top of the bracket. He's 37-3 on the season, and he's really had a great year for himself coming into his senior year at Dallastown. Also on that top half is Dylan Rodenhauber from Redland, who himself had a nice Section 3 tournament, beating Wyatt Hall from Chambersburg in the finals. He's a guy who's up a weight. He had to spend some time down at 95. Dustin Swanson from Garden Spot, he's 30-4. He didn't have the best Trojan Wars tournament. He actually lost to Dylan White from Carlisle, but he's wrestled really tough since taking that loss. So I think he could pose some issues on that bottom half. Same with Marquise Holton from Central Dauphin, a guy who really came out of nowhere this year in terms of, for me at least, not really. This is his first time with any type of varsity action. So here I really like Jamal Brandon, but I really don't know who comes out of the bottom half. I think it could be Holton. I think Hall it has a chance. I think Swanson has a shot. So, I don't know. I think that bottom half is a little bit more wide open.
I agree with you. I don't know who comes out of there. It's such a crapshoot. I think if you look at the records, even you have a couple guys that have double-digit losses. You look at a guy like Jacob Sharp from York Tech. We don't see many York Tech guys in districts. He's 21-2, but he finished third last week. So now you got to question scheduling. How's he going to bounce back after finishing third a week ago? Getting beat. Marquise Holston, I think, is a bit of an unknown. I mean, I know we saw him in the regular season, but it's like you said, varsity experience is limited. So I think Jamal Brandon's he's clearly the best guy in this bracket. But again, that battle for second, third, and fourth will be interesting, especially down in consolations when you get to that blood round.
No, I agree with you 100%. That's where I love seeing those guys going at it and fighting for a spot, and I think it will be fun at 220 pounds. Let's go up to heavyweight. Jeremy, I know you're excited to talk about this. Micah Wolfgram from Central York, top of the class here, 28-0 on the season, and he had a great section finals there because he had to go against a guy also ranked top 10 in the state, and that was Raymond Christas, and he beat him 12-5 in the final. So he really got to his offense. It's funny saying that about a heavyweight, but man, does Michael Wolfgram wrestle like a middleweight. I mean, he really does. You can really just see how he has his mentality set on scoring from the top position from his feet. So I think he's definitely the guy to beat here. I like Raymond Christas on the bottom half to do well, but Kyle Woosner from Lower Dolphin, also a state qualifier last year, was 31-1 thus far in the season. I think that bottom half is a brutal one because you have Jordan Esposito from Governor Mifflin, 31-3, ranked in the state. You have Christus from Dallastown, ranked in the state, 35-1. His only loss was last weekend. And then Kyle Woosner from Lower Dolphin, 31-1. So that bottom half is brutal to get out of.
I would argue this is one of the best weights of the tournament.
I agree.
For me to say that about heavyweight is a stretch because normally I'm writing stories at this point. I don't the heavyweight division, I call them dancing bears, but that isn't the case with this group. I mean, Kyle Wiesner had a great sectional. He did what he was supposed to. He came out and just annihilated everybody. In fact, I looked up in the final, and the final was over. I mean, it was
right.
That was
it.
He
got a pin in minute 48.
Yeah, he spent very little time on the mat last week. He came out and made a statement. And it's like you said, I'm anxious to see him possibly against Christus, but Christus has got to get past Espinoza in the quarters. We talk about these quarters again. And I think Wolfgram is a notch above everybody. And I think people are really looking at him as a state title contender with Keywan DeBow. That's the match everybody wants to see. But he's got to get him through a pretty rough bracket. He'll definitely be battle-tested by the time he gets to Giants Center because this weight class is pretty stacked.
Yeah, it is. And it's stacked across the state, too. I mean, you mentioned Keywan DeBow, but throw in Jake Slinger, too. Jake Slinger's he wrestled in a college open a few weeks ago. I mean, and he got some wins there. So, I'm looking forward to heavyweight, just not only on the District 3, but the state level. That is your preview for District 3 AAA, the South Central Regional, that's going to be happening. Alongside of that is also is a District 3 AA tournament, Jeremy. And if you were able to look at some of the results from last weekend at Section 1 and 2 in District 3 AA, there weren't a ton of surprises. And I just want to briefly go through some of these matchups that we possibly could see in the Hershey Arena. Levi Haynes from Biglerville is just wrestling out of his mind. I mean, I'm really excited to see this kid. I've seen him a little bit this season. I saw him at the Super 32, and he's just dominating his opponents. He's 31-0 on the season. I think he has no problem getting to the finals, and I think he goes against Noah Frack, who had a really good section tournament last weekend. He was able to come out with a 14-0, nearly a tech follow for Parker Davidson from Hamburg, so he's ready to rock and roll. 106, though, Levi Haynes, I think, is the guy to beat here. 113, Adam Jacob, Luke Fagley from Middletown. We're probably going to see a rematch there. So that's one I'm looking forward to. Throw in Matt Eamon from Anvil Colonia. I think he could really make some noise here. 120, we talked about AAA and some of our favorite weight classes. 120 is my favorite weight class in AA because you have Caden Wickard from Bowling Springs, 32-4. He won a tough section last weekend, beat Corey Smith from Bermudian Springs. Also in that top half with Wickard is Bailey Gimber from Hamburg. He was second last weekend at sectionals. He's lost to Nate Smith from Bishop McDevitt, a state medalist, two-time state medalist, 33-6 on the year. Talk about 120, Jeremy. That's going to be a lot of fun.
Well, see, that's one of the things I agree. I was just sitting here thinking, 113, 120. Those two weights don't take a back seat to anyone, I think, in the tournament. I really like what I see there from a bracketing standpoint. I mean, you got Nate Smith on the bottom. That's 120. I mean, Nate Smith on the bottom, Corey Smith from Bermuda. I mean, look. All tough guys. And then Bailey Gimber. You like the Gimber twins. That's where it starts at 120. And, you get, of course, Caden Wickard. I think this is a good weight. It's definitely one I'm going to be keeping an eye on.
Yeah, and then throw in a guy like Blake Showers as well, Nate Brady from Middletown. These are two guys that are not, definitely no easy outs here. And Caden Wickard's the anomaly here for me. I'm very curious to see how he can compete. Nate Smith beat Bailey Gimber 6-0 in the section final. So, you clearly see where that separation is and where he's looking to go. 126. All the talk is Bronson Garber and Chase Shields, and seeing if these two guys will end up going at it. Because you look at this weight class, 26 is just absolutely loaded, Jeremy. Bronson Garber, Dalton Gimber, Patrick DeMarc, Chase Shields, Seth Oops. It just doesn't end. I mean, there's just good guys everywhere. I would hate to be in this bracket. I really would.
I mean, District 3 has 8 guys in the top, 25 guys in the state. And this is one of the best weights of the tournament, bar none. And I think this is definitely one you circle. I mean, who comes out of here? I mean, Bronson Garber and Chase Shields, that's what we think we're going to watch. But we've seen strange things.
That's not a guarantee, right? That's not. You have Dalton Gimber there as well. I mean, Dalton Gimber beat Seth Oops 3-1, and then Chase Shields beats him in the finals 12-5. So a convincing win for him. Bronson Garber beats Patrick DeMarc from Trinity. He beats him 5-2. Patrick DeMarc was a state runner-up last year, right? So And then throw in Josh Tuckey from Biglerville as well. He's not a guy I would look past either. So there's there's guys everywhere here. There's landmines. I mean, I like to say there's landmines. There's landmines everywhere at 126.
You got to watch yourself in this. I mean, look, if you're like Bronson Garber, he's been in this position before where he's lost matches he probably shouldn't have lost in his career. And he's got to be very careful that he isn't focused on that other side of the bracket. You know, we say it's very cliche, you know, the next match, you know, preparing for the next match. Well, you better do it because you can't be thinking about Chase Shields and then face Dalton Gimber and then, oops, something happens.
Yeah. Right. And 32 doesn't get any, I mean, it's not as strong as 26, but it's certainly not weak. Colin Leonard from Northern Lebanon, who is a state medalist last year. You have Dorian Gonzalez. Dorian Gonzalez had a tough match in the section finals against Zach Rupp from Upper Dauphin. Colin Leonard majored Kyle Vernon here. So I'm thinking it's a Leonard Gonzalez match in the finals here. But, you know, then you have Eli Tuckey from Biglerville as well. Coben Carper from Bowling Springs. So, again, potential landmines here. 38, kind of the same thing. You have Tyler Martin from Bishop McDevitt, section champ last weekend. Jack Colston from Bowling Springs, the top seed out of Section 1 here. You know, I really think maybe we'll see a Martin-Colston matchup here. But it's a lot of fun. And of course, 45, this is where I see a drop-off because I think Gabe Miller is head and shoulders above the rest of the folks here at 45.
This is where it gets lopsided in AA. We were running through these weights here and up until 138, and I think it's a really, really good competitive tournament. And one of the more competitive ones I would say that I've witnessed, because I think you have a lot of heavy hitters at each weight, intriguing matches. And then you get to 45 and, well, Gabe Miller's just going to house everyone. That's just what's going to happen. I think he looks really good. I mean, it's a shame we don't have, Myers in there. I mean, it's a shame he's out. I mean, because I think he would have wrestled Gabe Miller, and that's one that we would be talking about more. But I just think he breezes through this bracket.
52, Trent Harder's your top guy here, a Section 1 champion, 25-3 on the season. He's a junior. I think he probably has not an easy route to the finals, but I think he gets the job done there. 160, Caden Morrison from West Perry, a guy who was last year was in AAA. He had a nice win in the Section 1 finals against Nick Kostyuk from Bowling Springs. And, those Bowling Springs guys, they come to wrestle, and Morrison beat him 3-2 in the finals. So that sets him up nicely at the 160 bracket. On the bottom half now, Kostyuk will most likely have maybe Ethan Erb from Northern Lebanon or David Bortz from Telpakin from on that bottom half. But I think Morrison has a nice place or nice shot to the finals there. 170, a little bit more intriguing for me because Carl Harris, he hasn't wrestled a ton of matches this season. He's only 17-2, but he's a two-time state medalist. Tyler Fisher, remember we talked about, possibly seeing Tyler Fisher doing some things this past weekend. He was second last weekend to Brandon Hamilton from Hamburg. We talked about that match happening again, and Hamilton was able to beat him the first time around. He beat him a second time around, so Tyler Fisher now is on that top half with Carl Harris. But I think this is a weight that I wouldn't be surprised if Hamilton, Fisher, or Harris wins this weight.
Yeah, and this is, again, we don't have that stud, that one guy that you just put ahead of everyone else. And it'll be interesting to see how this pans out. Now, I do give Carl Harris the nod. But,
oh, right. Two-time state medalist. You have to.
Yeah, I mean, you have to give him the nod. But 19 matches, just how's this going to shake out? And again, it's districts. Anything can happen.
Right, and then next week, when you go to regionals, it's going to be, you could potentially be wrestling those same guys, and I don't know. It'll be fun to see how some of these weights without those big names pan out. 182 trade Don Moyer from Elko. He's down in the bottom half, and then you have Jason Penton from Littlestown on the top half. Nate McCullum from Bermudian Springs also on that bottom half, and Justin Akers from Kutztown. 195. Again, this is one where we said without a guy like Chase Dahl, it kind of opens up a little bit. Dom Kelly from Trinity. He's your top of the bracket here. He's 14-7 as a senior. So, again, the drop off is real here because I wouldn't look past Ben Wildenhammer from Hamburg, 28-9. He had a nice section tournament last weekend. I wouldn't look past him either. 220. This is a weight class where we talked about last weekend, Ethan Rode versus Donnie Gallant and and Rode beat him in a tight match there. But can Gallant sort of bounce back and get the cart rolling in the right way? He beat him 3-2 last weekend.
Yeah, you always – and look, you mentioned regionals, and every time you touch the mat against the same opponent, I mean, the gap traditionally gets a little smaller because, you know what to do and what not to do. Coaching comes into play. I know I wouldn't want to wrestle a Central Dauphin wrestler 3 times because that gap's going to close because of coaching. So and guys you have in the room. So, yeah, I mean, Rode, I think, has kind of the inside track here. I think he gets to the finals. I think Gelnick gets there as well, and I think we're in for a really good final at 220.
It's funny you say that, Jeremy, because I think most wrestlers would be pretty happy to wrestle me 3 times in a row, during my career. But regardless, you're right. We always tried to close the gap a little bit on our opponents, but 285, Damon James, the big boy from Boiling Springs, 30-8 on the season. He won the section championship over Jacob Moyer from Fairfield. Nick Goodyear from Northern Lebanon, he really jumped out to a good season. He won the Section 2 tournament. I mean, 285 in District 3 is just, it's not loaded. Max McMurray, I thought, probably could have had a better tournament. Now he's on the top half with Damon James. So anything's really possible here at 285.
Anything's possible. And as I said last week, Damon James, I saw him take a couple, he took a bad loss, couple bad losses earlier in the year, one of them at King of the Mountain. But we got Damon James last week. We got the guy we expect. If he continues that intensity, continues to wrestle the way he's supposed to, he'll be fine. He'll get through this bracket. I think he wins this bracket, but he's gotta keep that level up. And it's heavyweight. You get slammed once, you get caught, it happens. It'll be interesting to see how Tahir Layton does. He finished 3rd in a section last week. It'll be interesting to see how he comes through. He's on that bottom half and could give Nick Goodyear or Jake Moore, whichever one he faces, which will be Jake Moore in what would be the quarterfinal round. I think he could give him some problems and get back to the finals. We'll have to see.
Definitely not as exciting as the AAA heavyweights, but still some good wrestlers there. It all happens this weekend, Jeremy, and you can follow along all the action on PAPowerWrestling.com. Jeremy, you're going to be putting out some of your first-round matches to watch. We're going to have a fan guide. We're going to have a lot of action coming at you. We have updated rankings. We have a lot going on at PA Power Wrestling right now, so you better be plugged in because we got college stuff coming up. Nationals coming up here. We got new T-shirts for sale for the Pittsburgh Nationals. There's just a lot happening here. This next month at PA Power Wrestling is all hands on deck. We're going full throttle Charlie's Angels 3 style here, Jeremy. So looking forward to spending a couple weekends with you and really this weekend looking at some of those District 3 guys. I know we're not happy about the venue, Jeremy, but still looking forward to getting back in the old barn and seeing some good wrestling.
Well, seeing good wrestling, definitely talking about some of the things we have coming up on PA Power, I think is important. And I think as we ramp up now, you get to district sectionals is kind of like an appetizer. Now you get to our districts.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, you start getting to the salad and start getting till you get to that main course, which is Giant Center. And we get the first preview of that this week with District 3, especially in AAA.
So you compared District 3 to a salad, like a Caesar salad.
Well, steaks is always the main course.
Well, I get that, but I mean, at least like maybe the sides, like if you're getting steak and potatoes or something, like states is the steak.
You could say it's the potatoes.
Regionals is like potatoes and carrots or something. It just seems kind of a salad, just kind of wimpy.
How about this? It's the dinner roll.
I can buy that with butter.
There
A dinner roll with butter. Okay.
It's a dinner roll with butter, and it's not what it was when I left. I mean, it just isn't. But you know what? I think we have some quality weight classes. We're going to do the 5 best weights of the tournament. That'll be coming out in the next day or two. So I'm anxious to get ready and get started with it.
Now you got me hungry talking about all this food, and I'm thinking the Pittsburgh Wrestling Classic is the dessert, right? We get to see USA versus PA and WPIL versus New York, and that is your pudding, your carrot cake, your truffles, whatever you want. I'm hungry now, Jeremy. I'm going to go eat now. So
you better get your wife to make you dinner.
I will. I absolutely will. She's the best. So stay tuned to PAPowerWrestling.com for all your wrestling needs. Follow us on Twitter at PAPowerWrestle. Like us on Facebook. And listen to all our other podcasts on both Spotify and iTunes. Until next week, fans, keep it classy.